Hello, everyone, and welcome to another user showcase webinar, starting a service library with public gauges. Today's webinar is featuring C Spire. I'm Danielle Ungerman, Product Marketing Manager here at Bright Gauge. I'm on the customer success team. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Justin Bryant, the Director of Quality Assurance for C Spire. C Spire is one of our oldest customers. Justin himself is a longtime user of Bright Gauge. And since they joined in our early days, they have grown to be over 3,000 employees and have combined with other companies, something that makes it very difficult to share KPIs and metrics with when you hit that level, but you still want to have the whole team engaged in your day-to-day operations as a company and to have a pulse on what's going on and a stake in the success of your company. So today, Justin's going to share a little bit on how he's made it so that anyone at the company can access those very important KPIs and metrics on a real-time basis via their service library. Hi, Justin.
Good morning, Danielle.
Good morning. Good morning. So yes, I just want to make clear that the recording will be available post-webinar. I'll send it out over email. As well, you'll be able to access it via our website, brightgauge.com/webinars. So before we begin, I just want to highlight some of our upcoming events, including our next user showcase webinar. This will take place in June 19th, and it'll be with an Australian-based customer. So we'll be covering all aspects of the life cycle of a customer from using reports. So from that initial pitch to bring them on board all the way to regular check-ins, sharing important metrics and upgrade needs with them, as well as quarterly business reviews and even annual reviews. So definitely sign up for that when you see it, and the recording will be shared with you if you can't make it. So just RSVP to that. And then we also have a couple Mastering Bright Gauge series coming up. So one of them will cover what's new in Autotask. We'll cover this in a little bit, but we've released a lot recently with that integration with that data source. So be sure to tune in there. And then also, I need to update the date on that. It's not for June 5th, but actually in the second week of July, we'll have a webinar on our best practices for organization and account cleanup. So a lot of you, I'm sure, have reached a point where your dashboards, you have too many of them, you have a lot of users on your account, and you're creating duplicates of everything from gauges to reports and dashboards. So we'll cover naming conventions and what you need to make sure you kick off the second half of the year on the right foot. Now, today, as we already went over, we're going to go through a little bit on how to create public gauges, the focus of today's webinar, but also really mainly how to start seeking out that operational maturity through, as Justin and C Spire have done, creating a KPI library, and then what it's like sharing those gauges with every department. So feel free to drop questions in the chat along the way. We have a couple team members tuning in that'll help answer to those. We'll also be shouting out a few during the webinar, so we'll be able to answer those live on the spot for you. And just to reiterate, yes, this will be recorded and shared thereafter over email and across our website. So first things first, what's new in Bright Gauge? We've come out with a couple new data sources since the start of the year. So Basecamp, this is our internal project management tool, and we've had a few requests from other customers, as well as Biz Rating. So if you're interested in setting up either one of those, you can reach out to success@brightgauge.com. And we've also made some large improvements to existing integrations, and there are more to come here for these. So if there's any data that you find is missing or that you'd like to see more of, or need some additional help elaborating on, just reach out to our support team there. They can help you pull those extra data points in. And then, yes, as I mentioned before, we've done a huge overhaul to our Autotask integration. So you'll see Here, just some of the areas that we've added in or elaborated on in those data sets, including ticket statistics, SLA data live, call data set information. You can see the full set of release notes by going to the link that you see here on the screen, or going to support.brightgauge.com and checking out our product release, product update notes. Now, the reason we're here, public gauges. So we announced this as a new feature a few months back and have since rolled it out to a lot of customers. We've gotten great feedback on it, but some of you are still wondering, how can you get set up with it? How is it applicable to you? In this instance, you'll see here that someone has used this gauge, it's a live gauge, public gauge, for their website to show off their average response time. And in this link here, you can see more information on what are public gauges and other examples for setting them up. Here is an overview of what that experience looks like. So public gauges are available to our enterprise level plans. If this is something that you want to try out, you can reach out to success@brightgauge.com. We'll be happy to help set you up with a trial of the enterprise plan so you can see this in action. But essentially, if you'd like to turn a gauge into a public-facing gauge, be it whether it's your CSAT score, average response time, or something you want to put in an internal team portal like your service KPI library, you can go to the gauge builder for the gauge that you'd like to set to public, go to the design section, and then click under the global settings to set it to public. And as you'll see here, you have the option under your gauges list to see which gauges you have set to live. This is great if you have multiple team members jumping in. But you'll see that it generates a little snippet of code for you where you can just then embed it in the body of wherever you'd like to see it live. So yeah, any questions on this or any additional help you'd like on setting these up, or if you'd like to get set up with that trial, you can reach out to success@brightgauge.com. Now, I'd like to turn things over to Justin and have him go into how he's come to use BrightGauge and how he's set up his service library. Let's see.
Thank you, Danielle. All right, so as Danielle stated, I'm with C Spire. I've been working with them for 5.5 years. C Spire is actually the 6th largest wireless provider in the United States and the largest privately held wireless provider in the United States, and they're based out of Ridgeland, Mississippi, which is just north of Jackson. I am actually in Knoxville, Tennessee, and like I said, been working here for about 5.5 years. So been through 3 or 4 acquisitions, and our company's grown and gone through a lot of change. Just within, this, for the sake of this conversation, we're going to be looking at a very small piece of the overall C Spire business. C Spire is about $1 billion in revenue, about 3,000 employees, and about 15 to 20% of that from revenue and employee count standpoint is what we're going to call C Spire business, or what we call C Spire business, and those are the ones that utilize ConnectWise at the moment, as well as Confluence and our ITIL Foundation, ISO audit, all that kind of stuff. So I'll get into a little bit more of that as we go on, but just to kind of give you an idea of what we're working with. C Spire overall offers wireless, fiber to the home, managing cloud services, professional services, value-added reselling. They got a lot of different lines of business. And so again, we're mainly going to be focused on the managing cloud services portion here. And what they've done is legacy tech links, again, was about 150 million and probably about 300 or 400 employees, and had about probably 800-900 clients. And they took that, and then they took the legacy C Spire managing cloud services that was mainly around co-location and disaster recovery services, combined those into C Spire business. So just another quick little high-level overview of where we've been in the past past little bit of using BrightGauge and doing integrations and all that fun stuff. We've got a goal as this acquisition goes through its fun phases to pass our ISO audit next week. And so as we integrate, setting the scope of that was very important. But what we had to do was keep it very simple. And so as I go through these things, we've been down the path of having too many tools in the tool set, not knowing which to use when. And about 2.5 years ago, our Bright Gauge data source got deleted. And I don't know if any of you all have ever seen those prompts, but there's about 3 or 4 check boxes that it says, hey, you're about to delete this. Oh, by the way, you're about to delete this. And if you delete this, you can't get anything back. Well, our internal IT at the time thought that maybe they could get it back and ended up going through that process. And so we had to start from scratch about 2.5 years ago. And I think we've got about 8 goal lists that we use, 73 schedule reports, and 183 dashboards right now. So, it's nothing small in the sense that we've gotten a lot done in the past 2.5 years, but we did have to look at how we were utilizing Bright Gauge and everything that we had done. We were in the process of selling and being put up, for market. And so when we said, hey, can we get Bright Gauge to help us rebuild all this? The answer was, it's not really in the budget this year. And so we had to come up with some creative ways to get it all rebuilt. And with that being said, all of our data sets within ConnectWise Manage, which is an on-prem solution for us, are all custom. All the gauges are custom. We don't use anything that's out of the box with the Bright Gauge data source. Now, there are variations of what was one of the out of the box solutions. And so we've got a ton of custom fields that we use. And so we had to add those into the data sources and the gauges. So you may see things, like SLA information that's pretty standard across the board, or average response time pretty standard across the board, but we've had to add some extra things in there. And so they're not out of the box. But again, we went from prior to Bright Gauge, not having hardly any information out of ConnectWise. We would export a lot of things, put them into Excel, and then do a lot of manipulation to try to get the visualizations and the data that we needed. And that was taken, just from our service, our support team was taking anywhere from 8 to 10 hours a week to gather that information. And so we started utilizing Bright Gauge there just to save time and automate some of that. Did really well, and then, like I said, it got deleted, and so we had to take a step back. And through the process of rebuilding, like I said, when we created all of the custom things, we found that we could use a lot of different fields, and with the SQL, the power of SQL, and the power of Bright Gauge, we were able to do a lot of really cool things. And it had a lot of people asking, "Oh, can I do this? Can I have this?" Oh, sure. We were just handing out gauges and KPIs like candy, and we got to a point to where I'll liken it to like a battle analogy, but used to, we'd bring a stick and some rocks to the gunfight. We got to where we were, maybe having a bow and arrow, and then when things got deleted and everything kind of opened up, we had this full arsenal. And what we noticed, that people would walk up to the gunfight with a nuclear bomb, and so they wouldn't understand what to use when and how to use it to be efficient. And so we had to take a step back and really rip out a lot of the information that we were giving to our users and to our managers from just a support team, from our VPs. I mean, everywhere there was just too much data and nothing was actually being done. People would see something that was red, and they would say, oh, okay, well, how do I impact that? And that's something that we found to be an issue. And so when we pulled that back, we released layers, or what we call layers. And from our support standpoint, layer 1 are the frontline people, the techs working the tickets that are coming in, and they've got 3 KPIs that are on that dashboard, and their goals to not have their name on that dashboard. And so those are the foundation, stale tickets, ticket age, and breaching SLA are those 3 gauges. And so they know what to do to get their names off of those, and they are fundamental in the success of the experience that our clients are having. And then layer 2 is that management, their management structure and their management layer that has a little more information, things like our NPS or our survey scores, more trending information like winter tickets coming in based on hours and things like that. And then it goes up another layer to a director/VP layer that looks again at more trending and just a little bit more information. So we found that to be helpful. And especially when we look at rolling out, again, this is 15 to 20% of our business as a whole that are utilizing this product. And so when we look at trying to grow that, which is our goal next year, and actually starting next week this year, we've got to make it simple. We've got to make it something that people latch onto and say, hey, this helps me do my job. And it gives us the traction to be able to bring the tool sets in and say, let's talk about how, what you're doing to define success. How are you measuring it? Where are you measuring it? Things like that. So we can help automate and bring some clarity and direct action to those business units. So I'll start talking about good old ITIL here. Right before I do that, so our KPI library is in Atlassian Confluence, and it allows us to have a central location for all those KPIs that directly impact or pertain to the overall health of that line of business, which is C Spire business. They live there, they're sourced from there, and so we've really gotten away from having to wait for Steve to email his Excel spreadsheet that lives on his desktop out to management. We want to know where this stuff lives so that we can, provide the accountability, the visibility, and the different things that come along with knowing where, what you're looking for is and how to get it and how to share it. And, when it's been updated, all that stuff's listed in there. And I'll show you all that in just a second. But on to ITIL. ITIL is the Information Technology Infrastructure Library. That's what ITIL stands for, and it's just a proven framework on how to manage IT, and that can be internally or as a managed service provider. And so you see these buckets here. Each bucket is we've got those into processes, and then the strategy down here as far as the service design, service transition, service operation. When it comes to managing IT and providing a service for, again, your internal organization or for clients, this is a proven, documented framework to help you do it efficiently and effectively. And it's very, it's very common. And so if you don't have an understanding or any knowledge about ITIL, I would highly recommend hopping on Google and watching a couple of YouTube videos, or there's a lot of really good resources out there for this. But it sets up the foundation and again the framework for what we do every day and how each of these organizations and these processes intertwine with each other and provide our clients with a great customer experience. So it starts, and you'll see this is a circle because it all feeds back into each other. There's no silos here. There's no lack of handoff. I mean, all of this stuff plays together to again give that good experience to our clients. So it's compiled of policies, processes, and procedures. We have process owners inside of our KPI library that, again, I'll show you in just a second. But just a high-level overview, policies are the laws of the road. So say you're going on a road trip, and this is the best way to found to explain it to people who are unfamiliar with documentation or just the verbiage of documentation in general. But policies, processes, and procedures. Policies are, again, your laws of the road. So it's a speed limit. It's, you're not allowed to drive on the wrong side of the road. It tells you what side of the road to drive on. Your processes, it's the map. So if you open up your preferred Waze or Google Maps, whatever, and put a destination in, you get the route that you want to take. That's the process. And then the procedure are the detailed step-by-step directions that tell you you're going to take a left turn on the main street, you're going to drive 5 miles and then take a right turn. And so those are kind of how all those play together. And I'll hop into the actual library here and give you something else to look at other than the ITIL circle. So ITIL, again, is the framework, and in order to verify that we're in line with that framework, we have an ISO audit performed. So it's an international standard that's set to mirror the ITIL's best practices. And so ISO 20000-1 is what's current now. And again, our external audit starts next week. And so we've got a lot of work to do next week as far as it's a recertification year. And so they get to go through every one of these processes and every one of the documents that we have and verify that we're following the documentation and being can provide evidence and proof that we are doing that. And that's the big thing with the audit, is just answering questions and again providing evidence that we're meeting the responsibilities for the standard. And with that certification, it gives us the accreditation and also helps us meet compliance for particular services that we service. Sorry, particular verticals that we service through our client base. And then also, I mean, again, it being a proven foundation. I mean, it gives us so much structure into what we do every day. We don't have to worry or wonder about, oh, well, who do I go to for this, or what happens after this step in the process. Or as a new employee, you can look at the overall documentation and get a really good understanding of how our business works. I mean, so there's a lot of pros with it. The cons are it takes a lot of time. Documentation isn't necessarily one of the most fun things for everybody. And so we've assigned document owners, and we've got some processes internally that allow us to make sure that it's updated and things are running smoothly for those particular processes and functions. But I'll show you some examples here of what we do from our SMS process, and SMS is just kind of the whole structure of what we do, our plans, things like that. But we will let's take incident management. It's a pretty straightforward one. So incident management again, we service external clients, and so they pay us to provide IT support for them. And that's in a ton of different services, whether it's cloud, public cloud, end user support, antivirus, web filtering. I mean, you name it, and we've got a service for it. And so when one of those services breaks, it follows our incident management process. And here are the home pages for those. So we establish who the owner is, again, where to contact them, even what they look like, what the description of that process is in a quick, high-level layman's term, what phase of the ITIL lifecycle that falls under, what the value to the business is. So why is this important? Again, we're trying to help people do their jobs, and it takes a little bit of work. And so we found a lot of times people just go back to the old ways if they don't see some immediate results or know the why behind it. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do here at the high level homepage for each process. We've got drop downs, so manage documentation. We use configurations inside of ConnectWise with end dates, expiration dates, to verify and set up templatized tickets to make sure that each process is reviewed at least yearly. And so that's, again, a way for us to be able to give the auditors evidence that we have reviewed this document. Here's who reviewed it. Here's when they did it. And this list, again, the policies, processes, and procedures, and then any additional managed documents that we have. And managed documents are very defined. There's a separate process for that, as far as you can't edit a managed document if you're even the process owner. We have a team that does that for us. If you have team-specific documentation, more of the procedures and day-to-day, how to install Windows, 10, then that stuff, we've got team sites and things for that. But this is strictly revolving around the ITIL framework and the ISO standards within that framework for the managed documentation that you see here.
Justin, we have a question that's come in.
Okay.
Are you using a custom SQL integration with ConnectWise and Confluence?
We are not. So we are actually using, there's a macro, I believe it's called iframes is the one we're using right now. Yeah, it's a macro within iframe, and we just copy and paste. When you go to the public gauges, let me pull one up real quick. And I'll get into the detail of this here in just a second, but we take from the design tab on the public, we take the address here and simply paste it into a macro within Confluence called iframe, and then we adjust the height and the width as we need to.
And for the configurations you're linking to for the documentation.
Yep. So those are, let's see, go back to manage documentation. When they're reviewed, the team, it's a person on our team, but when they come in here and review this and edit it, at the very bottom there's a page properties field that we use, the data last review. And so when it is reviewed, the configuration record gets updated and this page gets updated. And so the configuration record is what ties, from the workflow standpoint inside of ConnectWise, that kicks off the tickets. And then it's a manual, if that's a more direct way to answer the question, I guess. But they're the same, if that makes sense. Okay.
Okay. And then
All
some
right.
of what you have set up here using your break gauge public gauges.
Yes. So inside of the process reports, and I'll look at these, there's some more fields right here I'll quickly hit, but so we've got the associated ISO requirements. And so this is a manual thing as well, where we went through all of the requirements and said these pertain to what are we on, incident management. And so that everybody knows, what their part of the standard is and what their part of the framework is. And then open OFI nonconformities, those are tickets from an audit standpoint. And then the managed document activities are the tickets that are created based on the configurations expiring. So all that lives here. We've also got a more detailed view into what ITIL is and what that service life cycle looks like. And if you probably won't be able to see the fine print, but every one of these blocks is actually a process within ITIL. And so those coincide with everything you see listed here. So each of these has a homepage and a definition, and all the things that are on this exist with all of the other processes within ITIL. So now we can get into the KPI fun. Off from this page again, we want people to understand the visibility and the importance and what it is that they're doing and why they do it, and more of the why behind things. And so we list out the KPIs that tie to this process, a quick description, and then why do we do it? Why do we track it? And then the data source. And so we will click into one of these real quick. And this takes us to the KPI library, where we have function, process, and service KPIs here. It gives us visibility into who updated it, when they last updated it, where this data source is. Anybody that has access to Confluence has access to this library. And so again, there's probably about 600 users who have access to this, and they all can come in and see any of the data that's in here. And so there are some reporting things, like some financial reporting that we will hide from people, but everything is here for everybody to see. So if you're doing well, you're doing bad, it's visible, but it gives, again, a little bit of accountability and some visibility into what's going on and how a process or service or function is doing. That's also a single source. If you wonder, oh, well, where's that KPI at? It's very easy to come here and look through this list to see what it is that you want to find. And so having it all in one location, again, you're not having to wait on Steve to send in an Excel spreadsheet or so-and-so to update something. You may still have to wait on them if it's on an automated process, but you know where to go to find it, to see if it's been updated, or to see who to reach out to get an update from. And so we found that to be very efficient and very easy, especially for upper management. As far as our general manager can come here, and if he's got 5 things on his agenda that he wanted to improve this quarter, he knows where to go to see if it's improving. And so again, it's streamlined for us, and so far it's been working really well for us. We started this in January, and this was kind of a child of not only our integration and tasks of the audit, but also the release of the public gauges through Bright Gauge. And so being able to have a non-authenticated way to see live data it was a game changer for us. Because when you send an executive or a VP or a president or whoever, a login to something, even if it is AD integrated, there's still that extra step that, can be a hurdle to get over. And so, the public gauges, again, we're using it internally, but it allows us to have a non-authenticated look into the KPI. And the one thing I didn't mention on the other pages, but at the very bottom of that process owner page where we list out all the information about the process, there are these two links. And so we have a Bright Gauge dashboard behind each of these. So all of these KPIs are listed within, here's the summary within Confluence that has everything that's on there listed out. So you can see things as they trend together, or all in one view. But we also have the detailed information because the drill down information is not available here, which is a good thing, right? You don't want an external client or anybody being able to really drill down and see what makes up these numbers. In order to get those numbers, we build the dashboard behind it, and we have a process where they send an email to an email connector, and it creates a ticket on a board, and we can then provide them access to that dashboard if they need it. But it mirrors those KPIs. And then through here, it gives them the ability to drill down and export and sort and all the things that you would normally do within Bright Gauge. So we'll go back here. So within this, we've got a quick little summary of what the KPI is, what the description is, the why behind it, the data source, who owns it, all those types of things. And this is also something I put in our details within the ticket, within the gauge info. I have a standard list of things that I put in here so that the person who has access to this, instead of asking me or my team directly what filters are applied to this, if we have this updated, they can very clearly see, okay, it's 12 months and the geo is one of these. And so it's helped. I found it useful because as you grow and as more people start using this, more questions come in, more requests come in, and this was one way to give a self-serve option for that. But a lot of that stuff's replicated here as well. Let's see, we'll look at another cool thing that I really like about the public gauges that most people are not aware of. So the one thing, like I said, that I find value in, and that our executives and really anybody who looks at this will find value in if they know it exists, is that you can click the different segments and dimensions within a gauge and have the graph react to that. And so if we want to compare a specific group or dates or whatever these fields are down here, it's as simple as clicking the numbers or clicking the teams in this instance, and it will show those in a relative view, which is helpful when you're again looking at 20-30 teams down here. I'll hop over
Justin, we had one question come in. That's let's see. It said, in reference to the one specific gauge about call volume, how are you integrating that, and what services are you using to pull that?
Yep. So right now, call volume is being tracked by the inside of ConnectWise. There's a source. Was it phone or was it email? And we're using phone to determine that right now. We are in the process through integration switching our phone systems. And so on my to-do list is a task to integrate Bright Gauge look at integrating Bright Gauge with our new phone system. That's not the case right now. And so we are pulling ticket information. Anytime somebody calls in to our help desk, a ticket's created. And so just by that ticket being created by our help desk, the default is phone. And so, the assumption is that any call in, is not going to be an email created ticket. So it's going to be a phone created ticket. And so we use that type to determine the call volume. And we're looking to integrate the actual phone system once we get settled in and it actually gets fully integrated or fully used. So again, the KPI summary that we've got here allows us to look at things over time. And so we can see things, if they're interacting with each other, or if, we see a drop in our decision makers in PS, overall, what is that doing to our score? Is it impacting it? Yes or no? There's also, we've got dashboards in the back end that look at NPS and our survey results in a lot of detail. This is just the high level KPIs and KPIs that were selected by the process owner of the business relationship management, that we put in the KPI library. And so there's stuff behind the scenes that their teams focus on, or even our data analysis teams and customer service representatives. They have other things that they look at. This is just a piece of it. And again, it gives us the ability to kind of come in here and look and see if dates are tying, or if we see X, Y, and Z happening at the same time, and how to react to that. Through this summary page. And then of course the Bright Gauge dashboard is another place to look at that all at once. We've also got some things in here that aren't in Bright Gauge. And so our availability matrix is an example of this. The mediums Excel, it sources from from ConnectWise, in the sense that the process right now is based off of incident statements, which come again from tickets and ConnectWise, but we haven't found a good way to determine availability based on that. The fact is that this KPI lives here, even though it's not a Bright Gauge sourced KPI. The document lives here on this page and is updated by the person who owns this process on a monthly basis via reoccurring ticket within ConnectWise. And so, again, there's things that don't fall into Bright Gauge at this time, that we're still tracking in this library. And the same goes for global change management. For the overall C Spire, we have a process to where C Spire business change management hits a certain threshold or a score, then it gets sent to the global change management, and it's a separate product that tracks all of the lines of business. So the wireless, the fiber to the home, it's not just C Spire business. And so we've even got that listed in here, and they don't offer, the cool things like Bright Gauge does, as far as the ability to put that live gauge in here. So any questions about the KPI library, Danielle?
I guess, how often are you updating this? And I saw that you had owners for each section. How often are they incentivized to update it, and are they using it and sharing it with their team members?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So the usability, there may be a view count within Confluence. I've not looked at it yet, but again, it's started kind of January, February-ish. But in essence, we have yearly reviews of each of these documents because of the ISO audit that we go through. We have to review these yearly. And so through those tickets, we're coming in, and part of the document are the KPIs. And so the KPIs are being reviewed at least yearly. We've also, processes are one thing. Services, when I was going to talk about things that we're doing and things that we're growing with. The service KPI library is a separate animal in the sense of, we start breaking down services, our ConnectWise data has to be on point, and it hasn't been in the past. And with every integration that we've gone through, we've not done the best of jobs of cleaning all that up. And so going through and defining what a service is has been difficult. And so I actually meet with them bi-weekly, monthly, and quarterly individually to establish and verify that they've got those success measures defined, see how they're measuring it, because these services also go past the legacy tech links that first acquisition borders. And so we have owners of services that aren't from tech links, and they may not even know what ConnectWise is. And so there's a big work effort there of meeting with them constantly to try to make sure that they've got everything they need, we've got everything they need, and that their KPIs are living within the KPI library. The same thing holds true with the processes. My goal is, once we get services stood up a little bit and the audit's over, is to meet with the process owners monthly, and then I meet with specific team leads within project management and service and a bunch of different lines of business for just weekly calls on touch points to see whether it's data analysis or specific KPI reporting or discussions. And those all get kind of reviewed through there, and then we create tickets if anything needs to change, and follow the processes to get the managed documentation updated if it's needed.
So aside from being really meticulous about how you've put this together and constantly updating it and carrying the conversation over week, using this framework, how have you found it to improve your overall organization, especially as you hit 3,000 employees?
Mhm. Yeah, so I think continual improvement, which is a big piece of ITIL, is probably the biggest uh, benefit, or the easiest. It's the lowest hanging fruit, I guess. So outside of just people understanding what their role is and how they are doing, and understanding that the goal is 90 and you're at 85, so you need to be higher type deal. Outside of that, it's really being able to take a step back and from a higher level view. For example, this gauge looks at our managed service agreement types and tells us what the NPS, what the response SLA, some pretty detailed information on a particular service. And so I have a service owner that I can go and say, hey, you owned end user support. By the way, did you know that your NPS is this, one of the lowest on our services, and can directly work with them to figure out what's going on, how to fix it, things like that. And so it's giving us the ability to do that, but also the ability to do that in a effective way. I'm not having to go in and, spend days analyzing data to figure that out. I can literally click this button and it'll show me, the information that I need to take action on.
And then what's next steps would you hope to accomplish with having this here? It is still fairly new too.
Mhm. It is, yeah. Next steps, by the end of this week, I've got to get all these services within the service KPI library updated and ready for our audit. After that, our team's goal, or our team's charge is to replicate this throughout the other lines of business. And that task in itself, we look at, wireless support, or just wireless in general, is a lot different than a managed and cloud IT provider. And so it's marrying what we're doing with ITIL and that framework into what wireless is doing, and coming up with the same, the same type of information, and the same, whether it's the KPI library and the public gauges. In essence, we're kind of starting at nothing in a sense with them, as from an automated reporting standpoint. So really just establishing everything that we've done within C Spire business over into those other LOBs, and continuing to populate and grow the library, and extend our data sources and things within Bright Gauge, because obviously there are different applications and different things that the other lines of business use. So really just growing and figuring out how to marry it all together.
Great. And then for those tuning in, what are some of the KPIs that you measure here that you refer to more than other ones?
Um, I would say me personally. So I've kind of, I'm more of a consultant when it comes to working with the processes and the services. Once they're set up and running, I kind of let the owners run those KPIs. As far as there are things that I will go take a look at. Like I have a team that we work, I own service reporting, continual improvement, and something else. I can't remember the third process or the third function that I own, but I have specific KPIs that I look at on those, and those are the pretty standard ticket age, response times, and just closure rates, income outcome, kind of capacity management from the standpoint of we work internally. And so I want to make sure that the people who are serving our clients, or the people who are needing different KPIs and things created, that we're doing that in a timely manner and an effective manner. But NPS is a big one that I would look at if I wanted to see, whether it's by service or contact type or whatever it is. Our clients are trying to tell us something, and I think it's really important that we listen to them and listen to what their complaints are, so that we can come up with action plans to improve those. But SLAs and NPS are probably the two from an external standpoint that I would look at the most.
Got it. And then we have a few more questions coming in now. So one of them is, how long did this whole process take from planning to execution? And then the other one is more around company education. Is there onboarding and training on the ITIL methodology? And then how did you garner buy-in and accountability to make this work for all areas and levels?
Yep. So the first question, can you repeat it again real quick?
How long did the whole process take
Okay.
from planning to execution?
Okay. So I would say January, February is when we started, when we came up with the idea of, hey, we need a place within our knowledge management system that houses KPIs. And we had some of this stuff already built as far as incident management and I mean we had service dashboards, right, that the people were they were looking at SLA percentages, so some of that stuff was already built, but a lot of it had to be tweaked or a specific filter applied to it, or just looked at a different way. I mean, again, you look at SLAs, response time, NPS, those are pretty standard no matter what service or process you're looking at. The KPIs were already also established within the documentation, and so it was more about, okay, well, how can we bring them into the library? And so, over the past probably 2 or 3 months, we've answered that question with the questions of, what do we measure, and some of the baseline, how do we measure, already being answered. Um, and then the training. So we have a resource tab up here that looks at, we have specific training modules, which are, videos, and we have C Spire University is what we call it, but they are legitimate videos on what are we doing with ITIL? What's that initiative look like? Also, process owner responsibility and training. So as a process or service owner, what are you responsible for when it comes to the ISO audit and the the ITIL framework? Because we've got some new faces in this process, and so having the buy-in is difficult. We have been lucky that our executive leadership team and the president and general managers of each of the lines of business see the value in this, and we're able to show that value by saying, hey, look, how much time are you spending on reporting? Where's it at? And what are you doing about it? And they kind of just look at you and say, well, I don't really know. And then we show them things like this that say, look, if you had this information at your fingertips, you could, the time that you spent compiling it, you can then take that time and spend acting on it. And what do you think that would do to your line of business? And it's pretty easy to get buy-in from that standpoint. And then even lower from a technical standpoint, our NOC, overall NOC is was so excited about what we're doing within Confluence from a documentation and accountability and visibility standpoint, because they feel that they get dumped on all the time. And so the documentation and the data and the KPIs will kind of give them a reassurance that it is happening, or a way to find the problem and help fix the problem, opposed to it just continuing to happen. And so those are the major reasons that we're getting buy-in right now, um, for this and for the the process in general.
Great. And that leads into this next question. How are you using gauges to determine if you need more staff in particular departments, say managed services or dedicated help desk?
Okay. Yeah, and so they're actually banding. We do it a couple of different ways. This is one of them. So we use banding, which is trying to think of the best way to explain this. So there's, imagine another line down here. So there's an upper and lower threshold that we've looked at the previous X amount of months or years data and defined that band or that threshold. And so if anything's above it or anything's below that for a continual amount of time, then we investigate. And so we look at the trends. And so these are some of the gauges specifically that we look at and say, okay, well, Birmingham, for example, ticket counts going down. Are we staffed appropriately? Do we need to adjust those thresholds? The trends right now, and there's a lot of movement with things that happened 12 months ago that aren't happening now, or they're happening in different places. And so it's a constant touch point with the support team to say, and support management to say, hey, is this banding right? Do we need to take a look at adjusting that threshold, or are we saying we need to make a change one way or the other? And then capacity management is a process all in itself, from just a services managing cloud services standpoint, and the majority of their stuff is still done in Excel. That isn't in here. And I think we've got it on the docket to get into the KPI library this week, but they look at, data center data points that say, hey, here's how much storage, here's how much X, Y, and Z that you've got, how much you're using, bandwidth utilization, things like that.
Okay, any more questions for our guest today? I'm not seeing any come into the chat now. I guess, Justin, if you want to leave our attendees with some final thoughts on setting this up and how they might be able to accomplish that, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, what I've found is that keeping it simple and keeping it actionable will bring the most traction to the people who are actually doing the work. And so, using public gauges allows us to bring that information, to leadership size. And through leadership, we can get the buy-in and the drive to, have that trickle down into changes within our organization and the things we do day to day. So, being able to, again, define success is one of the biggest things that I've found within our organization that we didn't do a good job of. And so the first step is define what success means to you. And then after that, take a look at that list and say, okay, well, how do we measure this? And if there are ways that you can do it within, ConnectWise or whatever, ITSM, or, whatever you're using linked with Bright Gauge or whatever the case is, you want to measure those. And then you want to look at, how much time am I spending on this, and how can we or should we automate that? But define success, measure success, and then raise the attainments of whatever those goals that you set are. And, again, through public gauges, we're bringing visibility and accountability to those KPIs and those goals, and therefore driving action from people across our organization to make things better and raise those attainments.
That's awesome. This is really impressive and something that puts Bright Gauge to shame a little bit by not having our own internal version of this. But for those who missed it too, I didn't include in my updates, we now have some field guides accompanying our data sets when you're in the Gauge Builder. So you should be able to see what some of those fields mean when you are going into your ConnectWise or AutoTask and in the Gauge Builder, and you look to the right, you can look under the data set details and it'll show the field guide underneath there.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I mean, Bright Gauge made this possible too with those public gauges. I mean, we've looked at Power BI, we've looked at a ton of other tool sets, and Bright Gauge's functionality and the ability to do this is huge, was huge for us, and that's really what allowed us to do any of the KPI library that you saw.
Thanks again, Justin. And as always, if you have any questions about setting up public gauges or with your account in general, you need additional training, you can reach out to success@brightgauge.com. If you'd like help building out anything or have extra questions on something that you're working on, just feel free to shoot that our way as well. Thanks again, Justin.
Not a problem. Thank you all. Hope it was informative.
Oh, it definitely was. And thanks everyone for joining us today. We'll see you at the next one in June.